headline cost for the London Data Store project?
Yeah.
Is there a cost benefit?
Well, in terms of how we have a sort of dispersed model in terms of and this is an organizational change point as well, I guess. So the guys who work on the data store, we've got our data management asset groups, part of our intelligence and communities unit. We've got our tech guys who do a lot of the sort of technical stuff, and then there's me. And those guys don't have a line reporting relationship to me, but we've all worked together on this. And as I say, I'm just the battering ram, and then they do all the real work, like managing the data and uploading it and making sure it's correct, etc. And they have all taken that on as part of their business as usual. So there has been no extra resource investment because of the data store. And they just took that on as part of their work. So I think the total cost for the site was £9,000. And that was it. It's built on open source. It's very cheap and agile. And we kept it very, from the very beginning, we said to people, the guys in data management used to say to me at the beginning, we better run this by legal. And I kept saying, no legal. This will never happen. So, yeah, but no, that's the cost. Apart from staff time, obviously, but that's part of business as usual.
A strong feeling that actually the emphasis shouldn't be on who's using the data. And that really feels like that's going to be a big worry, certainly for ministers and sort of politicians who are putting this data out there. So what would you say that we can say back to them and sort of say, well, actually, we just need to focus on getting it there? What's your kind of...
Well, I think that's an ideological position, isn't it? You either believe that data is a public good and it should be out there, or you don't. And I was always very concerned, because you need to keep things very clean in this business, because there is so much resistance. If you get nitpicking into, well, we've done this consultation and there doesn't seem to be that much demand for it, no, get it out there, because this is emergent. And if you're dealing with any kind of complexity, you have got to put stuff out there and see what emerges. And that's a slightly different model the public sector is used to doing. It's used to calculating your project, deciding the resources, and then going with it. This is a much more chaotic model, which says it's not up to us to decide what's important. Just get it out there. Now, if we're still in a situation where councils are deliberately publishing their £500 expenses in PDF to prevent people from manipulating them, we're not there yet. So I think the important thing is to keep focused on the very basic principle of open data is a public good, period. And not get involved. I certainly don't want to get involved in any of those things, because then it's just avoidance and excuses, right, to me.
What's your policy on publishing location data?
For individuals or for...
I'm thinking about S-derived issues around licensing.
Well, what I'd say about the OS, we were in a different situation before the consultation around OS data, and that big push to release that out and get it, get as much as possible as free. And it seems to me there's been far less debate in the Open Government, Open Data Society since they have, released a lot more. So I think it's that model seems to be working pretty well, so that you can get X amount of data up to a certain level of granularity, which allows you to build a certain type of business, and after that you have to pay. I'm kind of agnostic on that, really, personally, I think.
Are you publishing location data?
I can't answer that, actually. I'm not sure whether we are. Probably no. But we have things that are obviously built on top of OS, yeah, but at that kind of level. So a lot of the transport apps, for example, would have layers over OS data. Yeah.
Well, what's the point of the question? That are you running into any difficulties publishing data that are derived from other people's intellectual property?
No. No, that certainly hasn't been raised as an issue since October.
Have you had any examples of councils being embarrassed as a result of having published data that turned out to be inaccurate? I'm thinking about, is there any grist to the mill of naysayers, people who say there are risks that we can't quantify? Has anything happened already?
Not that I'm aware of, but obviously, I would need to be cited of that at a local council level were that to happen. But all I would say is, and what I say to people consistently is, reporters have been doing that for years. What's the difference? So, and data is subject to interpretation. What the important thing there is the engagement model. So if councils are going to publish and run away, and they don't see what people are doing with it, then they can't come back and say, actually, this is where because the fundamental thing is data is always wrong. Right? It's always wrong. So you have to presume, because what is perfect in terms of data? And if you allow people to sit around and wait until it's perfect, it'll never happen. What's important is you put it out there. And people, I think the experience I have found is that if you put stuff out there and it's wrong, we've done that in the GLA. Chris Taggart, sitting down the back there, pointed that out to us. He said, if you guys are going to be at the vanguard, you want to make sure you're getting it right. And we had our financial data, which he was looking for, and he wasn't able to compare month on month because we weren't putting the right identifiers on. Well, that's a question of somebody like Chris ringing us up and saying, hey, guys, you need to change your identifiers, and us going, thanks very much, Chris, heading up to finance and saying, you need to do that. That's a far less hostile situation than if we, A, hadn't put it out there at all, and we're making him work really hard to get at the information. So there's an automatic growth in trust through openness. So if councils put it out there and they get it wrong, people are more likely to say, hey, it's great you put it out there. What's going on here? Rather than that just non-engagement and sort of council bashing.
At the moment, many of the good stories we have are basically to do with apps in the App Store, and Apple is basically the main distributor for visualizations that use the open data. Do you have any thoughts about how we build a kind of sustainable economy for developers, apart from just put it in the App Store?
Well, I mean, what we've always taken the position for our job is to put the stuff out there, and it's up to the market, our development community, to do what they want with it and to build businesses from that if they can. So what role we would play in necessarily stimulating an ecosystem around that? I've always stayed away from the apps for democracy type kind of approach, because I kind of think, developers and entrepreneurs are interested in building business, and they have the best nose for deciding, how am I going to build that business? What I think is germane for us is, and health is a good example, because there isn't as much traction with health data as there possibly might be. And I suspect that's because we're not releasing the right kind of data. So it's a bit kind of chicken and egg, right? So until you have all the data out there, and those patterns emerges, and developers say, I can build a business from that, you kind of can't judge that. But I'm sort of loath to have the state, in a sense, necessarily intervening in stimulating that system. I think something like madwdata, or Make a Difference with Data, is important because that's a public resource that is in the accountability transparency proposition. But as for the market, I think the issue is, release as many data sets as possible, because the developers can make their own decisions about what's useful. They don't really need us helping them to do that, I don't think, but I'm up for correction on that if there's any developers here who want to chip in.